The following is a presentation of the Matt Talk Podcast Network.
For 617, probably more than that. I don't know. The numbering is always suspect, but the show and content is not. This is the Short Time Wrestling Podcast. My name is Jason Bryant. I own many leather-bound books, and I talk about this great sport of wrestling pretty much incessantly. Today on the show, we've got Johnny J-Rock Johnson, club coach out of New Jersey and Raw 2 for 1. He's got a pretty good arsenal of alumni that have come through his place over the years. We'll talk about wrestling. We'll talk about developing kids and working beyond the high school spectrum. One thing I'm going to get to right away before we get to the show is how you can listen to some of these things before listening to some of these things. Wait, what? Yes. So if you like this content and you've been listening to this content, whether it's a week, whether it's a year, whether it's since I started Short Time back in 2013, you can get this stuff early and ad-free by going to matttalkonline.com/join the team. There are a couple different ways to get these things early and ad-free. You don't get this little section right here. You don't get the pre-roll, the mid-roll, the post-roll, any other roll you can think about. Dinner rolls are good. Cornbread's good. Had some cornbread with barbecue the other night. But anyway, matttalkonline.com/join the team. If you join the Patreon, you get the early audio advance stripped out of the ads, which, to be honest with you, that's the way I kind of pay for some of the hosting and such with this. Or if you're looking for a broader reach of content for, $9.99 a month, you can get the show pretty much as it happens live. I record this show, usually with the guests now that I've got my studio set up, live on Rockfin. I sometimes stream at other places. I'm still working on whether it's going to go on Facebook Live, whether it's going to go through the Matt Talk Online Facebook page or the Matt Talk Online group, or if it's just going to say something exclusive behind the Rockfin paywall with your subscription there. And over 50 wrestling content creators are on Rockfin, ROKFIN.com/Matt Talk Online. That's how you can sign up there. So a couple ways you can get this stuff before it gets released to the masses via this here podcast feed. That being said, I'd like to thank everybody who has contributed, including our latest contributor, Kyle Klingman. Yes, you know him from this network and the On the Mat show, which has been going on forever, starting with the Dan Gable Wrestling Museum down in Waterloo, now with Track Wrestling, as it's that outlet's flagship program, On the Mat, along with Andy Hamilton, of course, and another podcaster, Earl Smith, joining the family again. He was a contributor once before, and now he is a team member, a patron once again. And speaking of podcasters and podcast nerdery, and Earl and Kyle, they are going to be joining me on September 30th. It is International Podcast Day. And what does that mean to you, the listener? Well, if you don't know what International Podcast Day is, well, it's a day that talks about podcasting. And yes, because I am an enthusiast, an overwhelming aficionado of podcasting, I probably listen to every podcast about podcasting out there. That's mainly so I can make this show better, understand the technology and things of that nature. So I'm always trying to learn about this medium, and it's exploded here in the sport of wrestling, especially. When I started, the only other show out there that you heard of that is still going on is, well, you might not even heard of it, is Mat Slammers. But you can go back into the archives and look up Mat Slammers. I've had them on this show talking about their podcast that started way back in 2006. My first foray into podcasting was 2008, although I listened to some shows before that. Eddie Goldman's No Holds Barred podcast was actually the first one I listened to. But anyway, International Podcast Day. This is coming to the streaming platform. It's going to be free on Rockfin. I'll make that free. It's not going to be behind a paywall. And the Facebook Live, I'm still working on. But I'm going to have, as of right now, 25 guests over the course of about 12 hours. So I'm going to live stream our guests talking on a variety of different wrestling podcasts. You're gonna meet the people behind those shows. You're gonna meet the people behind the ideas of those shows, the tech that they're using behind it, and a lot of people that were listening to this show, that were listening to Blood Round, that were listening to FRL, they have gone and since started their own shows. And a lot of these people weren't podcasters a year or two. Some have come and gone with their own shows. Some people are avid wrestling podcast listeners and have consumed the medium, and that's how they get some of their news and some of their jokery or their shenanigans, if you will. Hey, Farva, what's that place you like with the goofy stuff on the wall and the mozzarella sticks? Yeah, shenanigans. Oh, yeah, Super Troopers. That's there. But anyway, we've got all sorts of topics that are going to be discussed on International Podcast Day. Couple slots available. At the end of the day, I'm going to open it up to fans to come in and wax poetic a little bit about just the sport of wrestling and a little happy hour. So keep an eye on MattTalkOnline.com, my personal Twitter at Jason M. Bryant, and on at MattTalkOnline on the Twitter worlds, and I'll be posting it on the socials on how you can participate and watch International Podcast Day Wrestling Takeover. So we might even have some guest hosts from the world of podcasting, which none of you probably know. Because here's one thing I've learned about wrestling and podcasters. I am the crossover. I am the guy in the Venn diagram. I'm not running into any of you people that are podcasting with me at any of these conventions, these virtual meetups, these online seminars and things. I'm the only one from wrestling. So I'm trying to bring the wrestling world into podcasting and bring those podcasters over here because it's been a great medium to help fill the void a lot of places because, let's use D3 Nation, the Bonaventura twins. They are two brothers, twins, actually, as I said, who are coaching. But since I shut down the Ice Hour a couple years ago based on lack of funding, they've stepped up and filled the D3 void, had some great interviews so far. So that's what's coming September 30th. If you're interested and you want to be part of that, shoot me a note at jason@bryantwrestling.com or a DM at Jason M. Bryant on Twitter. Again, my DMs are open. It's International Podcast Day coming to a TV near you. No, it's not coming to TV. Just right here in your ears. You can watch it live. I think it's a Wednesday. Let's pull up the ye old calendar 15 days from. Yep, that's a Wednesday. So I'll have a shirt and all that stuff. So that's what we got. And now this is a feature. I'm going to get to this new feature. I don't want to say new because I actually have used this feature one previous time, and it was on the episode with Adam Hunter, and it was where I'm going through all this archival database stuff, and right now I'm through 1958, and I'm trying to identify and basically fact check ourselves, and this is where your team membership dollars go to, is to also help me basically justify the time into digging into this research to eventually create databases and statistical references and archives, not just for me personally or you get access to in the sandbox, but for the Wrestling Hall of Fame, for the wrestling community. And one of these things is I'm going through the NCAA wrestling guides, the old amateur wrestling newses, and any internet archives that I can find, and trying to build a results repository of sorts. Now, like Intermat's ownership has changed hands 3 or 4 times since the onset of it. And, we've got some results now, thankfully, because of Track Wrestling and Flow Arena, things like that. But back in the day, I want to know how many 4-time ACC champions there are. That's not anywhere. We've often heard about how many teams we've lost. And is it because of Title IX? Or we've lost, we've lost over 700 teams at Title IX. No, we haven't. We've lost a significant amount of programs. I'm still finding new ones every day, which is the scary part. So we've also lost teams before Title IX was even enacted. So part of it is fact-checking and getting our shit together. Because if we are saying things that are grossly out of touch, we can't be trusted. So I'm trying to put some actual gravy on top of the turkey here. That doesn't make any sense at all, but you kind of get what I'm saying here. So I'll bring up this topic I was discussing on Facebook last week with Wade Chalice. Wade had pointed out something and said at one point there were over 1,000 teams. That is not true. At no point in college wrestling history has there ever been 1,000 schools wrestling at the same time. Right now, as of 1958, I'm up to at least 262 reported schools. Now, that's basically looking at the postseason tournaments, the dual meet results, the individual tournaments that are within those seasons, and the end-of-the-year dual meet standings that are in the back of Amateur Wrestling News and the NCAA Wrestling Guides and things like that. So I'm trying to put together all reported scores. So, we lost a lot of programs in the late 70s and early 80s, but considering the NCAA has only had over 1,000 schools in the last 10 years, and the NAIA is only about 300 now. So we haven't had that many teams sponsoring. So part of this is, again, I'm not doing this to prove Wade wrong. It's not about Wade. It's just to the point we're saying we want to come up with concrete numbers. Oh, we've lost this many teams. And also, where's the blame lie? If you're going to say a school was cut because of Title IX and it was cut in 1961, that is wrong. Like Vanderbilt, they dropped their team in like the late 50s or early 60s. Like if even then. Birmingham Southern, which is now a Division III school, they tried to be Division I at one point. They had a team for like 3 years, like in 1958 through 1961. Are we really going to, a lost program? It was 3 years. It was an experiment a school did in a very loosely organized NCAA at the time, NAIA and things of that nature too. So that's where a lot of this research is coming from. Why are we doing it? We need to make sure that we have better statistics, and that starts with going back to the beginning, as far back as we can get them, and identifying them. So sponsorship, starting in amateur wrestling news, the late Jess Hoke did a great job at putting little 2-3 sentence blurbs into AWN back in the day about saying, oh, this so-and-so is now at Albright College or something. They're starting wrestling. Or Lebanon Valley, also starting wrestling. Now, oddly enough, both those teams are now dead, but still, there was a source for news, and right now it was just in the pages. And if you're under that particular edition that I'm citing came in 1958, which is a long time ago. So chances are you're listening to this, you probably weren't flipping through amateur wrestling news in 1958. And if you were, hey, awesome on you for embracing the technology. That's what I've got for you now. But anyway, to what I was saying, this new segment, I'm going to pull out some crazy, stupid stats that pique my interest, and I'm going to insert them here in the front end of this show. I'm going to insert them in the front end of this show, kind of like right now. And you know what? This stat isn't even going to come from amateur wrestling news. It's going to come from the first weekend of college football. So I'm going to play my little intro tune, and then you're going to hear this, and then this is what's going to happen on the front end of Short Time, pretty much when I remember how to do it. So I'm going to give myself a little pause for an edit point to create the bumper music, the indent, if you will. Lane Hatcher tossed the game-winning touchdown pass on Saturday, September 12th in Arkansas State's upset win at Kansas State. Hatcher is a transfer from Alabama where he redshirted last year as a freshman, but that's not why he's mentioned. You see, he was a 3-time Arkansas State wrestling champion, and his dad, Greg Hatcher, was one of the pivotal figures in launching high school wrestling in Arkansas, as well as college wrestling in the state, including the state's only Division I wrestling program at the University of Arkansas at Little Rock. You can hear more about Hatcher in my series, Rocked Up, chronicling the start of that program at GetRockedUp.com. I don't yet have a name for this topic. I wanted to call it What the Bleep Moments, but that just, I don't need an unnecessary curse word. I'd get an eye roll from my wife. It's just because, anyway, that's what I got. Now it's time to talk to J-Rock, as I've talked to you for plenty of time. But as always, I'd like to thank you for spending your time with me, because you've always got time for Short Time. Joined today by Johnny J-Rock Johnson, coach at Raw 2-for-1 Wrestling in the great state of New Jersey. 617 shows, and this guy has slipped through the cracks for years. I've known you for about probably more than a decade, J-Rock, and it's good to finally have you on the show. You put my feet to the fire. Go, hey, well, let's talk some wrestling, man. So we're making this happen. So 1, welcome to the show, and 2, how you been?
Thank you very much. I appreciate you having me on. Definitely respect that. I've been doing very well, man. Obviously trying to make it through this COVID-19 scenario like everyone else, and survival is the name of the game at this point, but we are doing pretty well.
Reason we got you on the show, you got some interesting takes on the world of wrestling, whether it be technical. You've got an interesting background in the sport yourself. You were a Division III All-American 3 times at what was then known as Trenton State College. It is now known as the College of New Jersey. Had a chance to wrestle for the late, great Dave Icenhower. And before we even get into your results, what was it like wrestling for Ice?
Ice was the man. I'm a Lehigh boy. So he's got lots of connections in the wrestling world. Scully at Adidas. We were sponsored by Adidas. I've been an Adidas guy since 93, 94. So Ice was one of the better recruits, if you want to call it that, in the state of New Jersey. I mean, he got a lot of Division I scraps. My senior year, the entire team was transfers. The entire team came in from somewhere else. I mean, it was pretty crazy. But Ice is very good at that. He had a lot of connections within the university as well, which allowed him to make some maneuvers and do some of the stuff that he was able to do, such as run camps with 1,000 people every summer at a time, 1,000 people at a time. And we probably had the biggest camp in New Jersey, whether that's Rider, Princeton, Rutgers, or what have you. The College of New Jersey, all of those guys from those schools actually worked for the College of New Jersey Trenton State camp. I mean, it was a humongous camp, but Ice was the man.
Yeah, I won a Twitter drawing a couple years ago. John Hangy at Ryder and Mike Denver, another TCNJ guy, they were having a camp, and it's like, hey, enter our Twitter raffle. I end up winning the Twitter raffle, and in the mail comes a pair of old school Trenton State College wrestling shorts. It didn't say TC, it was Trenton State. I'm like, I wear those things all the time. They're like,
that's right.
They look like old gym teacher shorts. So like, I'm expecting Joe DeMeo to wear these things, but they're actually they're a lot more comfortable. But talk about how you ended up at TCNJ. You started wrestling as a freshman in high school, had some good success there in New Jersey, but you're a 3-time All-American in Division III. In that era, really, really tough hammers. Like you said, a lot of D1 imports in that era. So how did you end up in Trenton? Ewing, technically.
Yeah, Ewing Township. I was a guy that was obviously brand new. I was a straight neophyte to the sport of wrestling. Actually was on the freshman basketball team, playing guard, and was holding down the guard position, doing my job. I moved to New Jersey from Baltimore, Maryland, so I was used to handling the rock, and I was dishing the pill and handling my business on the basketball court. Unfortunately, my mother still lived in Baltimore, and during Christmas break, I had to go back home, so to speak, right, to Baltimore to see my family for Christmas break. So the basketball coaches, Mr. Wright, his philosophy was, if you miss any basketball practices, you will be demoted. So I was the starting guard. I got demoted. And I sat out a game. I sat out 2 games, and then here we are at 3 games, and I was behind Russ Hughes, a guy who's out here still in town, so to speak. And he had me behind him for 3 games, and I was just like, this is a little too much. I don't want to play backup in Morristown, New Jersey. And so the Rustlers pretty much recruited me, and they told me, come out, man, you'll get a varsity letter. And I was like, my eyes jumped out of my head. I was pretty excited about that. So I went and got me a varsity letter. First match, wrestled a guy named Timmy Widener from Cinnaminson, 114 pounds, walked out, and don't ask me how. I don't have no idea what I was doing, but I pinned him. And then I was hooked. So the following day, I had my picture was in the paper. They were talking about me in the paper, people patting me on the back and saying my name on the loudspeaker in the morning. I was like, oh, I can get used to this. Never mind the fact that my next match against Athern from Northern Burlington, he double armbarred me and pinned me in the first period. But that's neither here nor there. The fact that I got already hooked to this sport had pinning Timmy Widener, and that's why you know me today. Otherwise, you may not.
How many times do you get to say that guy's name? And how many if you run into him since, man, stop telling that story.
Right. Yeah, I know. It's an interesting story, but it's I had a very bizarre path. I mean, I knew nothing of wrestling, didn't have any family members that wrestled, or there was no history, lineage with wrestling. I was just connected to it through my freshman football coach, Jack Welch, who wound up recruiting me. He was part of that recruiting process to get me from the basketball team to the wrestling team. I can't say mid-season, but the season was already underway. And when I got over there, I just fell in love with it, and found a brotherhood with guys over there that I'm still, best buds with a lot of those guys today. I mean, we've been around for now multiple decades, and I loved it. I'm glad that I made that decision, obviously.
Pretty crazy that you can go from starting in one sport to starting in another brand new. And in the sport of wrestling, we talk about the freshmen. A lot of the centers around the 103, the 106, the lightest weight class debate, where you can pull a sport where you can pull somebody out of the hallway and they're a varsity starter in a varsity sport 5 minutes later, literally.
5 minutes later. Yeah, I was, nothing special. I was nothing special for a couple of years. I was 9-7-2. They had ties back then. I know you guys don't remember any of that, but they had ties.
Hey, I'm not as young as you might think. Okay, you might have been out of high school before me, but
right. There we go. All right. So yeah, I was 9-7-2, and then the next year went 19-5-2, and 27-4, and senior year made a run for the state title, was 30-1, ranked number 2 in the state, and wound up third, losing by 1 in the semifinals. And then from there, people could see that obviously I was progressing. It was clear that I was progressing, and so I was getting recruited, and I don't know how or why, but I was being recruited by like maybe five of the top 12 schools in the country. Now, mind you, at that time, Pennsylvania wrestling was here. So you had Bloomsburg recruited me. You had Lock Haven. You had obviously Lehigh, Naval Academy. A lot of schools in Pennsylvania. I didn't mean to throw Navy in there as a PA school, but a lot of schools that were in that top 12.
It's close enough. It's a border state, you know.
Right.
I could be down. I could be in Naptown pretty quickly from when I lived in Lancaster.
There you go. Yeah, it was a good route for me to go local because my family was very tight knit, and for me to stay 45 minutes from home and go to school, and my family to show up to all the dual meets every weekend like it was almost like a high school match was an exciting kind of thing for me. So I wound up at then Trenton State, now College of New Jersey.
One thing that I tend to be an advocate on is people when they had the opportunity to choose a school is ignore the division. You want to find the right fit. You want to find a place you can grow. For example, the argument about should the D2 and D3 guys be able to go to the Division I championships, and well, they don't have that chance. Well, a lot of people, they don't have that chance because they're not ready for a D1 room yet. They will develop into a high talent. Let's look at obviously Tervel Delagnev is probably the most recent example of a guy who really was not on the radar, chose Division II Nebraska Kearney, and turned into an absolute monster while he was there. From you being new to the sport in a state that's got great wrestling tradition, new to the sport as a freshman, and then the opportunity to wrestle at the Division III level where you can still learn and still grow your technique, how much was that a benefit for you as a wrestler?
Yeah, so part of the hook, line, and sinker for the College of New Jersey, Trenton State getting me at that time was Division III athletes could compete at the Division I level. So that was part of it. So, I mean, it's cool to be 45 minutes away from home, and then if you won Division IIIs or you got a wild card, you would be automatically pushed into the Division I tournament.
Yeah, that ended pretty quickly. That was you just missed that one, didn't you?
Yeah, I just missed it. I actually was on the precipice of it. They cut it right as I pretty much walked through the doors. It was over. But we've had a national champion at our school. We had guys from Trenton State that were also able to compete at the Division I level. I was one of those guys. Obviously, I feel the same way. Got an opportunity to compete against some Division I guys and do fairly well. Joey Davis is probably your most recent guy, actually, because Joey Davis went to Notre Dame College in Ohio. He was a known commodity coming out.
He was like top 2, top 3 recruit all around, whereas Tervel was like third as a senior in Texas.
Right. Yeah.
So that's the comparison that I'm saying is the development at that level. Nobody was beating the Iceman in Division II. We know because nobody did.
No. And he was undefeated. He went undefeated against Division I.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was a tough kid, but like you said, he was on the radar coming out. He wasn't a surprise to anybody.
Yeah, having a pretty good MMA career right now. Now, as far as your career goes, you go in there, you go 4, 2, and 3 your last 3 years. Going back in the old weight classes, we're talking 142 and 150, and I'm doing some research. Didn't get the gold one, but the only times you lost at the tournament were to the champion. So, granted, twice the first time there. Froelich, the unseeded guy from Moravian, had the monster run. I was looking at his draw going, holy crap, unseeded to a title. That guy's a story in itself. Then your first time you make the finals there. Raphael Wilson, a lot of people don't know how good this guy was. 3-time Division III national champion, 4-time All-American from Augustana of Illinois. What was it like wrapping up with this guy? Because I think a lot of people, you talk even in Division I, our fans kind of our age, we know about it, but the 20-somethings coming through that don't even know about the 90s in Division I. Talk about what was it like to mix it up with this guy who was good at all levels here.
Yeah, so Raphael was obviously he went right out as a freshman, sophomore, was placing in the Midlands when the Midlands was the Midlands, which is, it was a lot tougher back then. A lot of post-grads were going, guys that were trying out for world and Olympic teams were going to the Midlands. It was a tough tournament. I mean, he took 4th, 5th as freshman, sophomore. I mean, he was a very competitive guy at the Division I level. For me, within the Division III circles, let's just say for argument's sake, we were the 2 best Division III guys at that time for argument's sake. And then we happened to be in the same weight and then we happened to meet in the final. So there was so much buzz and energy around that match. I mean, people were talking about it. One older guy, he was 60, late 60s. He flew in for the match. I mean, he had no connection to either school, whether Augustana in Illinois or Trenton State College, New Jersey. He had no connection to either school. He just wanted to see me and Raphael lock horns. And it was a solid match. I mean, I think we put on a good quality show. Final score was 6-5 in his favor, but we put on a performance. I mean, everybody stood up and clapped when the bout was over. I mean, it was I wanted that match, and I'm sure he wanted it too. So I mean, it made, as Dan Gable would say, the best matches are two guys that believe they can win. If one guy has a little doubt, it changes kind of the dynamic of the bout. But for me and Raphael, we both felt like we could win.
Senior year, upset early by the eventual champion Tom Late of Augsburg, who spent some time coaching at MIT. You actually beat a friend of mine early in that tournament. You beat Brian Zemer from Eachtown. I actually used to work in his building when I was with the NWCA. The offices were at Utility Keystone in Mannheim, and Stan Zemer, it was the man who ran the company, was a former team leader. So Brian and Bill Zemer, I'd seen every day when I worked there. So I'm looking through the brackets. I'm like, hey, there's a name I recognize. But
I know all of those guys.
When it comes to looking at your college career, and you hear it all the time about, if you don't win it, there's something that drives you. How much does not getting that gold medal, not getting that opportunity to stand at the top of the podium, drive you even today as a coach?
That's a great question. I probably wouldn't be the coach that I am had I not taken those losses. So I lost 2-1 in the semis as a sophomore to the eventual champ. I lost 6-5 in the finals as a junior, obviously, to the eventual champ, became OW. I lost to Tom Late as a senior, and he became OW. Pretty much everybody that beat me got OW. So
imagine being that good and that famous. When somebody beats you, then they're famous. Yeah. I'm paraphrasing that from somebody else, but anyway.
Yeah. So it was intriguing in the sense that, I mean, those losses weren't just regular losses. It wasn't a 12-4 loss where I could be like, hey man, that guy's just better. Whether it was better for that day or not, I mean, he was clearly better. I mean, 4 takedowns, 2 turns, he deserved the win. The losses I was taking were heartbreaking. So what that did was that enabled me pretty much, I already kind of had a concept of how I wanted to coach if I ever wanted to, which I didn't really. But if I was ever going to put my hands on anybody and help somebody, I had now a platform to work from, which is, hey man, from experience, I suggest you do this, or I suggest you do that. This is going to help you there. I mean, those tough losses helped me become the coach that I am, or mentor that I am today.
When we got to Raw 2-for-1, which I first thought, when I first saw it, I'm living out east, I'm going to the Beast of the East, and I'm saying, what's Raw 241? So explain the mindset of what the name means and why it's 2-for-1 and not 241.
Absolutely. So it is actually like all moms know exactly what it is. So moms know what 2-for-1 means. They go to the store, they buy something, you're getting a 2-for-1 deal. So the takedown game is what I mastered as a collegiate athlete. It was take them down and cut them. Now remember, starting as a 15-year-old, for me, I wasn't going to master. There was no way I was going to master everything. Mm-hmm. There's no way I was going to catch up to the whole sport. The guys that are 17, 18 years old have been wrestling since they were 5. So I'm already 12, 13 years behind. So how do I find something to catch up to these guys? And so one of the ways that I found to catch up to them was to find one area, hone in on that one area, and find my way up the ladder a little bit. So that's what I did. So it was the takedown game. I mean, I watched greats at the collegiate level when I was in high school. Jack Kuvo went undefeated his last 2 years, won 2 Division I national championships for East Stroudsburg. And his style was take him down, let him up, 2-for-1. And they called him the human takedown machine. They wound up calling me the human takedown machine, but I was no Jack Kuvo. But the idea is he was using a certain style that suited me. And for me to do the takedown game, I obviously passed that over to everybody that I put my hands on. So 2-for-1. Then the Raw is pretty easy. Rock Ages Wrestling. Nickname was J-Rock. And we rocking and rolling. We've been in the game for over 2 decades.
Yeah, I remember the first time I came across it. As I said, I was trying to even get the name, and it was guys like Alex Mead, Cody Gardner, Jamel Jones. I mean, these are names that I saw that were associated with the club. And yeah, we talk about, pour one out for Cody. This is a guy that came down to Virginia and was when he came on the scene at Virginia Christiansburg, he was cutting down to 171 as a freshman, and he's sitting there battling state champs like guys like Dan Scanlon, who was an eventual Division II champ at Limestone, and I'm sitting there going. And he beats David Craig somewhere, or somebody beat David Craig. Yeah. It was, I think Scanlon had beaten Craig, and then Cody had beaten Scanlon. I'm just like, who is this kid?
Who is this kid?
And then all of a sudden he's like, "No, I'm going 215," and he just wrecks shop in Virginia for the next 4 years. Wins 3 B's title. What was it like to coach a kid like that?
So Cody was always big, always lanky, and was goofy. So. What happened is with somebody like him is you knew that he was eventually going to grow into his frame, and mentally his mentality was going to match his body. And so you knew that he had a man's body, and you knew his mind was going to catch up relatively quickly. And Cody was always an inquisitive guy. He's actually, yes, very successful. One of my most successful athletes that I've ever laid hands on. But he's also one of the most coachable that I've ever laid hands on. I mean, he is a student of the sport, and he loves the game. He wanted to have his hands in there and figure out as much as he could. Okay, I got a little bit of this, understood. How do I do this? Got a little bit of that, understood. How do I do that? I mean, even at the collegiate level. I mean, he went to obviously Virginia Tech, he wrestled for Coach Dresser. He went to Ohio State, wrestled for Tommy Ryan. He was a guy that whenever he got back home, he was very inquisitive and wanted me to get my hands on him and help him continue his developmental stage. And he was a tweener, so he was caught. I mean, 6'3". He was a little bit too tall for 197, but weight wise he was thin, so he couldn't really do heavyweight. So I mean, he really didn't have a spot at the collegiate level. Either he was going to kill himself to make 97 or go up to heavyweight and wind up wrestling guys that were 40, 50, 60 pounds heavier. He just wasn't a big guy that way. But he was one of the better athletes at the high school level. Obviously, he deserved his ASICS First Team All-American. He deserved his Wrestler of the Year. He deserved to be the number 1 recruit overall. He earned all of that. I mean, he worked like a college kid while in high school.
We look at the era that those kids came through. I mean, like I said, some of the names I mentioned, and they weren't collecting at one high school. How did they fall under your coaching auspices, and then what was it like? You have those, usually when you have athletes like that in an area, they tend to conglomerate at one particular high school. All these kids pretty much stayed at some place. They did move around here and there, but they all didn't end up at one place. So how do they find you, and what's the draw for them to you? I mean, because compared to all the other great coaches, we got a lot of great clubs in New Jersey, and a lot of D1 accolades to follow it. So how do they end up with you, a D3 All-American teaching them the game?
Right. So, I mean, I was fortunate in the way that my whole career got started. It was Brett Motter out of Delran High School, coached by the great Dennis Smith. He wound up winning 2 state titles for Delran, and he was just a superstar by all intents and purposes. But his dad was a 2-time Division I national champ wrestling for Penn State. So his dad, Andy, was bringing Brett to me, and that's how I started. That's how I even got into the game. It was like, this guy is bringing his son to me. I mean, that's a lot. He's putting his faith in me to take care of his son. And I did the absolute best that I could to take care of his son. And then the floodgates just opened. I mean, if you're working with a guy that's a 2-time undefeated state champ, whose dad is a 2-time Division I national champ at Penn State, who, and Brett's ladder climbing at the collegiate level was off the hook. I mean, he went from DMP as a sophomore, or as a freshman, DMP as a sophomore, to placing 5th as a junior. And then senior year, we're getting him ready for the great one and only TJ Williams, out of Iowa, who at that time had not taken any losses at the collegiate level, wrestling NCAA. He was undefeated and was the Hawkeyes man, and a defending national champ who had beaten TJ in the semis the year before 7-2 at 149, but now they're both up to 157. And we wanted to get his mind right, wanted to get his technique right, wanted to move his feet a little bit, have his hands in front a little more, and have him be able to pull out a win in the national finals on ESPN. That was the idea. That's the stuff that we were talking. And so TJ got knocked off in the semis. Larry Quizell, rest his soul, and then Brett got an opportunity to wrestle Larry. He beat Larry in the finals, and Brett's national champ. but that's from 95 to 2000. And then everybody at that time was just falling out of the sky, just raw 2-for-1. And at that time, technically, I wasn't even raw 2-for-1. It was Johnny. Johnny Johnson. That's J Rock. Are you going to go work for J Rock? That was it. I didn't have a name yet. I didn't come up with a name raw 2-for-1 until 99-ish, 99, 2000 season. So technically, raw 2-for-1's been around for 2 decades, but I've been around doing what I'm doing for about 25 years.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where the internet kind of catches up with things as you know. It's almost like I compare it to recruiting classes. It's never your first class that does it, and it's the second one that sets up the third and fourth and fifth.
Right.
So you know, without the first, there's not the second. That's not the fifth and the seventh. So when we look at that talented group that came through, again, a lot of New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland in there, Pennsylvania, Lehigh Valley. So you kind of got a really good wrestling area to work with. And where do you think you guys finally hit stride nationally and people be like, we actually know what raw 2-for-1 is if they're out in California, for example?
Yeah. So that's a great point. So I would say, so I'm sure everybody knows who Ken Chertow is. So in the early 2000s,
if you have an email address, you know who Ken Chertow is.
So everybody knows Ken. So, but in the early 2000s, I was going to do his summer camps, and he was calling me out. He was telling me to bring 10, 15 kids every summer, come out to his camp, spend some time out there, and it was great for our kids. So the raw kids were getting a little different flavor, getting some tough PA kids, Ohio guys, and getting a taste of somebody else other than them beating on themselves all the time. So that was great. So, but at that time, one of the things that I was doing was, or that Ken was doing, was he was making sure that he was publicized who I was and what I was about, and say, hey, he'd get on the microphone and be in front of 1,000 people and say, hey, look, this is Johnny Johnson, this is JJ, he coaches in New Jersey. If you guys want to he does takedowns, this, that, and the third. So, so that was like 2002, 3, 4, and then we started having a little bit of success at Fargo, which was big at that time, right? So Scotty Giffen went out, won a national title, cadet national title, but he won a national title, and it just we started picking up a little bit of national name at that point, 4, 5, 6. And by the time we got to 2006, 7, 8, 9, and 10, it was, all bets were off. I mean, we were running wild. I mean, we were winning our kids were winning pretty much everything. NHSCAs, Gilas, Fargo, Ironman, Beast Cities. At that time, the 2 toughest high school tournaments in the country were Ironman and Beast. Ironman being probably the best, and Beast right up underneath it, back when certain schools used to go there. And, we used to run wild at a lot of those events, and it really helped push some of that national name out. I mean, like you mentioned, the aforementioned stars, Alex Meads, Mario Mason, Cody Gardner's, Jamel Jones. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on. And we had so many guys, Timmy Darling, Chris Diaz. I mean, but a lot of these guys were winning so much at the high school level that, you expected certain guys to be good at the collegiate level, but everything has to be matched up properly. But those guys were so good. I mean, they were going to some of those guys were going to college tournaments while in high school.
Well, you mentioned Diaz, All-American at Virginia Tech. Tim Darling and started his career at Penn State, ended up being a Division II All-American at Kutztown, if I'm not mistaken. And then a couple years ago, I'm in Des Moines, and I get this tap on my shoulder, and I turn and look, and it's Jamel. He's like, Mr. Bryant. Yeah. I'm like, what? It's like, what? Yeah, he's wrestling for Campbellsville. I hadn't seen this kid forever. So I went out there and placed a couple times. So, what is the relationship you have with these guys today? Some of them are now, they've got kids, they're coaching, they're not kids to us anymore. We're talking about guys that were coming through 15 years ago. They're coaching, they have kids of their own. I mean, they're heroes, and they have a high school legendary status to those who remember it at that time. But what's the relationship with your former athletes today?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great one. I think that's part of it. By no means am I a father figure to any of these guys, because they didn't need a father. These guys are coming from good households, good lineage. They didn't need a father. But as somebody that was their coach at one time or another and helped them to support them in their route in their career, I was there for them. And those guys today, like Jamel, if I call Jamel right now, I talk to him for an hour straight. A lot of those guys, Jack Clark, that was around at that time, Alex Mead, Gerard was around in the program helping out for a bit. Taylor Walsh, I talk to every now and again, his brother, Chad, same thing, Ryan Wolf, all of these guys. I mean, any of these guys, if I get something on Facebook, I mean, Timmy Darling might hit me, be like, J Rock, listen to, just crazy stuff. So there's nothing to disconnect me from those guys. Once you're in the program, and that's pretty much how I put my program together as well, which is if you're raw 2 for 1, I mean, this is your home. So we're not just a walk-in club. I don't have, walk-ins. It's not $20 a pop for practices or anything like that. I mean, once you join, I mean, it's pretty much your home, and I'm going to support you for the rest of your career, whether you wind up at Virginia Tech getting an All-American like Diaz, or Walsh is, wind up becoming All-Americans at Rider or Indiana, or whatever the case may be. I'm there for those guys. Jamel has always been one of my faves. I mean, he's always going to be, and I was proud of him. He obviously went on to college and won 2 JUCO national titles after winning a couple Beast of the East titles while in high school, becoming #1 in the country. I mean, he's a hard worker.
We look at the landscape of college wrestling, not college wrestling, high school wrestling now. We've got mega tournaments, dual teams put together that don't train in the same club. They're just putting together all-star teams. And not that there's, anything wrong with that in terms of getting the kids mat time, but the homegrown club, I mean, there seems to be a split in the wrestling market, the wrestling economy. We've got private lessons, we've got all sorts of clubs, and in New Jersey, where that model kind of started, there's still a demand for it. And how much has the club model changed over the years, and how much has actually you've stayed the same with your mentality with it, and how much has had to evolve in the internet era?
Yeah, so dual teams is like one of the big money makers today, and it has been for a while. And what a lot of the dual teams would do is they would go to the dual tournament, and they would bring these teams, monster teams. This guy from there, that guy from there, and then the long and short of it is that those guys were not training with those clubs or those programs or those coaches. So to me, it was to me, it was disingenuous. It wasn't real. It wasn't authentic. So to me, if I was going to show up with my team, it's going to be my team. So I'm going to roll into a team. I'm going to bring Eric Medina, who's #1 in the country. He wrestles from Blair. I'm bringing him. Bringing Mario Mason. He's ranked #1 in the country. I'm bringing him. I'm bringing Alex Mead. He's ranked #1 in the country. I'm bringing him. I'm bringing Cody Gardner. He's ranked #1 in the country. I'm bringing him. Stuff like that. I was putting Taylor Walsh on dual teams back when Taylor was just a little snot nose and was getting beat up by a lot of people way back. And then look what he developed into. But to me, it's bring your guys. Win, lose, or draw. Just bring your guys, because it's the idea. To me, it wasn't, and it's just not. The idea isn't to win, a summer tournament for a bunch of 14, 15-year-olds. The idea is I'm trying to develop you so that you can get an opportunity to compete, hopefully at the Division I level one day, and have an opportunity to get a scholarship and get your education paid for. And that's, to me, that's where I'm at with it. So to me, the dual team thing with just, these makeshift teams, just throwing together, 15, 20 different people who don't know each other, and a coach sitting in the corner just yelling out basic generic things that don't really apply to a guy. Like, if you want to coach Taylor Walsh, you better know how to coach him. He does some unique things. So you can't just yell out generic things to Taylor Walsh and expect, Josh Jeva. You can't just yell generic things to him. Jamel Jones, you can't yell generic things. There are guys that are basic enough that you could probably yell some simple things to, but a lot of guys are very unique, and they deserve to have somebody that understands their uniqueness while in their corner.
The uniqueness. Now we can talk about college wrestling a little bit, and being wrestling fans as we are, we lost our tournaments this year. The junior colleges wrestled, the NAI wrestled, the clubs wrestled, but we lost Division III, Division II, and Division I. We lost, we've at least postponed the Olympics. So we lost an opportunity to see 40,000 plus in US Bank Stadium. I watched the Vikings-Packers game this weekend, and I saw nothing but empty seats at US Bank Stadium. And I'm sitting there going, that was going to be a
crazy.
Circus. And
Yeah.
what are some things as a coach and as a wrestling fan you missed the most about not having our D1, D2, and D3 championships?
Well, I mean, it's a culmination of what these young kids are going after. What are you chasing since 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old in most cases, right? So these guys are going after something that's long term, and that's the long term goal. I mean, a lot of these guys, a la Brett Mattert, are going to win a national title and go on to the real world and make money and have a real life. So that's the thing, is you want to get a guy to that stage where that's the pinnacle for most guys. There's such a small percentage of people that do it. what JB does, which is try to compete on an international level, and surely not for a whole decade like JB. I mean, so most guys, maybe they graduate, go out and do international for a year or two, and then they are on to some real life. So I think what some of these guys missed out on was an opportunity to cap off their career. I mean, would you have liked to see, I would have liked to see Abby Y at 133 and Rivera Seabass. I just would have liked to see that. I'm brave enough to set it up at my own facility and bring those two in there just to have two monsters. I would have loved to see that. I would love to see what Aaron Brooks was going to do as a freshman, after they pulled their shirt off of him. I'd like to see if Penn State was going to uphold everything they said they were going to uphold. I'd like to see what Ohio State was going to do. I wanted to give these guys an opportunity. Meaning I, as the wrestling community, wanted to see these guys have an opportunity to go out and really prove themselves, because that's really what you said. I mean, what you said earlier, the aforementioned national title thing. So I was ranked number one in the country. I was ranked, I was top seeded, but I didn't win a national title. So for certain people, that might bother them 5, 10, 15 years from now. It didn't bother me because I was developing guys that went on to do that. But I can understand how that could bother somebody not having an opportunity to cap off their career. So Mark Hall was looking he was looking to be a freshman national champ and walk out as a senior as a national champ. That's a nice career. And he didn't have an opportunity to do that. I mean, I hate that guys didn't get an opportunity. I hate also that they didn't say that certain guys can get another year. So it just, everybody doesn't wrestle international either. So it's not like they can oh, well, I'll just go over here and do the U.S. Open or do this, or, I'll try for the Pan Am teams or whatever, the U23 World. Everybody's not doing that. So it's a little bit hurting. It's a little bit hurtful to know that some of these guys can't continue their career and see them end it in such a horrible way. But circumstances as they are, it was the best thing to do.
The Division III championships is where I had to make the announcement. And This is a situation where there's teams warming up to get that last pound off the night before. And seeing those athletes go through that, even we're so many of us are talking about the Spencer Lee missing his chance to be a 4-timer, Aaron Brooks, who was at a wide open 184 pounds. But there's guys that had their first chance to actually step on the mat as a senior at the Division III level, or a program like Washington and Lee, which hadn't had which has had one All-American in school history. And, Nate Scherer doing a great job there, having a chance. Now, granted, a lot of these guys were named All-Americans by the NWCA after the fact, but the opportunity to win in the blood round, to jump in the arms of your coach as a senior at your first and only time at the national tournament, that's the one thing that I think probably resonated with me the most is at those non-D1 levels, that these guys, especially Division III, where there's no scholarship at it, and you having had an opportunity to coach in Division III as well as compete there. I mean, what do you think the lesson is, or what do you think guys like that are going to take with them if they've got no eligibility left? In Division III, some of these sticker prices are $40,000 and $50,000 a year just to go to school. So I mean, what do you think these guys take away from an experience like this?
Well, the other thing is, all of that is true, but nothing is guaranteed, and that's a lesson you want to teach anyway, and you don't want them to learn it this way, obviously, but nothing is guaranteed. I mean, everything is, everything is, it's a day by day process. Everything that we go through. I mean, you're always going to have your, long term goals, 3 years, 5 years, 10. But nothing's guaranteed. So I think what happens is we put ourselves in a position to where, as these wrestlers have put their whole lives worth of blood, sweat, and tears into something, and they find out that they can't accomplish it. I think it was the right thing to do to hand out a makeshift All-American. I think that was the right thing to do. And at least that gives these guys something for 2020 to have and keep. But, you as you said, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. You want to jump in your coach's arms. You want to thank your coach. Man, I thank you for sticking it out with me. There was a lot of tough practices that things didn't go my way and I was ready to quit, and you helped me. You pushed me, made sure that I stayed in the game, and you told me not to stay at this weight and move to this weight because this would be better for my long term, and I did it. And those kinds of moments you miss out on by not having that actual tournament. So it's nothing I could give a kid. I mean, I'd love to be able to say, listen, this is your your fallback because of that. But there's nothing. I mean, those kids are going to hurt for a while by not having that opportunity. But when they go on and have their careers and their families, I mean, like I said, like a Brett Matter or somebody like that, once you start having a job and a family and everything, wrestling is great. It really is. And you'll look back at it and you'll look at what it gave you to help you and prepare you for your regular real life situation.
As somebody who picked up wrestling late and then having that Division III, actually, I want to get to the Division III coaching story before I go over to our freestyle discussion. Trenton State, before we started, I was curious on when you were there. Did it become Trenton State to TCNJ, the College of New Jersey? And you said that there's a screw up right off the bat with that.
Yeah, so they changed it. I was the assistant coach for Trenton State, and overnight there was a lot of talk. They were trying to change the name of it, but they tried to keep it as quiet as possible. But there even without the internet really popping back then, there's no way for them to keep it quiet. So middle of the night, 2:00, 3:00 in the morning, they turn off certain lights around the campus, so that they could go to work. And so they went to work and they changed the name of the school in the middle of the night from Trenton State College, which was the main signs as you come into the entrances, front entrance, back entrance, what have you. And they changed it to the College of New Jersey, but yet it was spelled Jessry. So they were in such a rush to get this fake name out that in spelling it the College of New Jersey, they spelled it incorrectly. And, but they deserved it because nobody wanted to change. And they took a name for us, the guys that were already at Trenton State at the time in any way, shape, or form. For us, you took a name from another school. So Princeton used to be the College of New Jersey.
Yeah, because I believe the first football game was Rutgers versus Princeton back in like 18. And if you look at the records, it's, I think it was Rutgers versus New Jersey was exactly how it was. So
College of New Jersey.
Pulling that one out the historical archive there. Good job, J-Rock. I was expecting that. Now we get to the freestyle, and you said you picked up the sport late, and you had basically an opportunity. You had to focus on the 2-for-1, the takedowns, because you're not going to get the top and bottom. But a lot of what you've taught translates very much to freestyle wrestling. And then we all look at the techniques, especially with the internet. We can watch, when Joe Flo went over to Russian nationals for the first time, and it was like, it changed the world on how we saw international wrestling. And then having covered the world championships, I guess 2007, I went overseas, but my first opportunity to see the Japanese women in person was in 2003 at Madison Square Garden, and the amazing tournament the Americans had, but still the Japanese just won on the tiebreaker, and they have just been so dominant on the women's side of things. And technically, tactically, what similarities do you see amongst maybe just the power countries, what the Russians, they've gone through several rule changes, didn't impact their performance. Same with the Japanese, didn't impact their performance.
Agreed.
I mean, what's amazing to you as a wrestling coach to see those type of nations and put their performance up no matter the rule set?
Yeah, that's a great question. Let's start with the Japanese women. So they're the most dominant. And so let's say there were 20 world team titles in the last 20 years. So they've won something like 18 or 19 of them. So the idea of domination is a real story with them. They have things under control, but then you have to watch some of the intricacies and the smaller details as to why they are successful. Why are they doing it at that level versus everybody else? And some of the things that you watch with them as you see them compete is those girls, they actually wrestle a certain style that allows them to be successful, which is they don't do what everybody else is doing, which means they're not giving people what they're used to. So if you're not giving your opponent what they're used to seeing day in and day out, and you give them something different, you're going to probably find some success, especially if you're really good at it. So what they don't do is they don't do a lot of collar tying. They don't do a lot of push-pull. The Japanese women wrestle a very open, stancy style. They keep their hands in front of them, their elbows tight, and they move their feet. Whereas a lot of girls, and I'll get to the guys in a minute, but a lot of guys do the same thing. A lot of people in the sport of wrestling, they just want to get their hands on people. And it's their idea of sending a message. Whereas the Japanese women, you can watch them for a 3-minute first period, not touch the back of their opponent's head once. They'll do little shoulder posts, V blocks at the shoulder, snaps at the wrist, fakes with the hands, moving their feet, creating angles, head posts, but they're not stuck in collar ties. And because of that, they're not giving up, obviously, what we call the Japanese whizzer. They're not getting hit with inside trips, lateral drops, things of this nature, because they're not letting those situations and those opportunities present themselves during the distance of a bout. So about 6 minutes, and they're just not letting you have it. Yu Sasaki, stance in motion, level change. She's ridiculous. I mean, every time she walks to a world championship, she wins a world title. Kawhi right now, which is NBA has their Kawhi. We have our Kawhi. Kawhi wrestles for Japan. She's unreal. She's never out of position. I mean, you watch her wrestle for 6 minutes, she's not going to be out of position. Somebody like Sasaki didn't get an opportunity to go to the Worlds last year, but you look at the two people that made the finals. She wrestled both of them before and tech balled both of them. I mean, so had she gone to the Worlds and been allowed to compete at the World Championships, there's a good chance she probably would have won another world title. I mean, she's just exceptional, just exceptional athletes, and just their style. They have a different style. They're not wrestling like everybody else at all.
Before we get to the Russians thing, I mean, what you've said more about the Japanese women's wrestling team than most wrestling fans will in this country, because, you know, if you follow women's wrestling, you're paying attention to it. And what is it about? I guess what I'm trying to do is maybe almost preach a little bit in terms of this is why you should watch women's wrestling, is because the technique. Get over the fact that, oh, well, you know, people will say, it's this, it's that. The technique, the level of technique with Saori Yoshida, and like my favorite Japanese wrestler recently was Eri Tosaka. She swept the freaking quad and can't make the team anymore. I mean, that's the depth there. I mean, just the technical and tactical quality of wrestling. Get it out of your head that there might be a ponytail there. This is good technique. This is great technique you can teach your kids. And what have you learned about wrestling by watching the women more than you had done maybe previously?
Yeah, but so the women's game is very unique because you're not paying attention to what most people pay attention to. The common eye when watching an event, first thing they think, "Ooh, look at him! He's bigger than him. He's going to win because he's bigger." Like, wrestling is way more difficult than just you being bigger than somebody else. And I think what the women's game shows, especially with the Japanese women. And I'm glad you alluded to it, because I probably would not have mentioned it else. They're small. They're tiny. I mean, they got no muscle anywhere. I mean, they're not defined in any way. So it's not like they're winning because they're stronger. They're winning because they're bigger. They're winning because their technique is on a different level. They're winning because their strategy is above and beyond anybody else that they step on the mat again. And that includes, unfortunately, at this stage, and I'm hoping that we can catch it, and that includes the American girls at this point. I mean, minus, a couple of superstars that we have here and there, Helen and so on and so forth, and we see what Sarah is doing. But with the Japanese, they put together an entire team of girls who are technically very equipped when they walk out on the mat to compete for 6 minutes and out wrestle you and out think you. And I respect that. I love wrestling. So for me, it's an easy match.
One thing the Russians and the Japanese have in common, not just their ability to win gold medals, but their ability to pull the rabbit out of the hat, to win a match in short time. I don't think, when Eri Tosaka was down with 15 seconds to go by a point, she's going to win the match. Jordan Burroughs says, I don't fear, he has that ability to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. Russians with their late just junk stuff you don't teach, it's feel. I mean, it's just what from your opinion as a coach, what makes these athletes have that X factor, that will to just, I'm going to win any way possible. The Damian Hahn quote, there's time on the clock, there's time to wrestle, but all that stuff you throw out there, I'm throwing a lot of different analogies and metaphors and whatnot at you, but just these nations have that ability to just steal that match late. What do you think is a driving force behind that?
I think one of the things that they do is when you create an athlete that feels like they're unstoppable based on their training. So, I mean, let's do it domestically. Let's start with a JB. Jordan Burroughs, his mindset of how he believes he is as a person, as an athlete, when he walks on the mat, number one, he walks into the gym, he feels like he's the best conditioned athlete in the entire arena. That includes Russians, Azerbaijan, Ukraine. He feels like he's the best conditioned athlete. That's one. Feels like he's the quickest athlete. Okay. So that includes Cuba, whatever. So this is his mindset. So when you walk out and you have this mindset when you're approaching competition, it allows you that when you're in a tough spot to feel like you can fight out of that tough spot, dig out of that tough spot, and you've been there before. So not only have you been there before, but you've been successful in said position. So yeah, I've been down by 2 before. I've been down by 3 before, but I dug out of that hole. So that builds their confidence. And so when you watch these Japanese girls, they just feel like they're the best. When you watch the Russians, they just feel like they're the best. And when you watch JB, he just feels like he's the best. Kyle Snyder, I mean, anybody now. I mean, we just feel like we're the best. What you're going to see right now with, not to jump off topic, but just to give another flair to it, is when you look at guys like Jaden Cox and all of these guys, David Taylor believes he's the best. He didn't believe he was the best when he was losing to JB before. He didn't believe he was the best when he was losing to Kyle Dake 8, 9, 10 times. He didn't believe he was the best. Today, 2020, if you walk up to David Taylor, he believes in his heart of hearts. There's nothing you can tell him to make him believe that he's not the best. And that is a huge, huge thing when you have somebody with a certain skill set, certain level of fitness and conditioning, and then you add on the confidence level. And then that's where Japanese women are. That's where Russian wrestlers are. And that's where we have a couple of our superstars in the U.S. Scattered about. We're in that position where it's just mindset is they feel like they're the best. And when you feel like you're the best, you don't feel like this person doesn't deserve to beat me. As good as they are and as competitive as they are and as well as they wrestled for 5 minutes and 45 seconds, they don't deserve to walk away with a victory. That's my victory.
Shifting gears to how we market the sport, and you'd sent me a couple comments that you wanted as a discussion topic, and I think they're valid. And one of them is uniform size mats. It's simple. It's one thing that we don't think about, but you see it when you go to tournaments and you've got 8 or 10 mats laid out on the floor, and you've got one that you need to add an extra mat section to. You've got one circle that runs right on the edge that's touching the other circle. And then you go to it, like say, even we've had this issue at the Virginia Duels sometimes where we've got the mats from our mat supplier and we got to make sure we have a 42-foot circle for colleges. And then, okay, we can't have that mat on that side of the arena because that's the college side of the arena. And the 38 doesn't work for college. It's an illegal mat. So something as simple as mat sizes makes the sport, sometimes it can prevent the college from coming to a high school because you got to use their mat. Well, it's only it's a 38-foot circle. You can't do that. Right. So, why does a uniform mat size just stick in your craw so much?
Yeah, man. So I think we need to have uniformity across the board the same way. I compare everything to the major sports. So what are the major sports in the U.S.? So obviously football is A1. Basketball, NBA is right behind it. Major League Baseball, number 3. And then 4 would be National Hockey League. So those are 4 major sports that we think of. I mean, you can throw in, racing, notwithstanding, we're not going to use it, but just those sports. Okay.
Yeah. Those road courses mess up your point entirely.
Right.
So does Major League Baseball outfields, but the infield's still the same.
Yeah. The infield is the same. Yeah. Distance for the pitcher, distance from first to second, all of that stuff, everything's the same. But the idea is, if you look at all of those sports, they have uniformity. So, the basketball net, the everything in basketball is the same always. So if I walk and play the Sixers, if I go and play the Bucks, if I go and play the Lakers, everything's the same. So the dynamics of our competitive field fits. Same thing with hockey, same thing with baseball, same thing with football.
I think in hockey the ice sheet might be a little bit wider, but the red line, the blue lines, they're the same distance. Now it's funny you bring that up because today I came across a guy whose name was Chitwood from Indiana in the Big Ten placements from way back in the day. So I went to Twitter and I posted a Hoosiers graphic of Jimmy Chitwood hitting the game-winning shot in the movie Hoosiers. Well, funny you mentioned that because the scene in the movie where they're at Butler Fieldhouse, Gene Hackman playing Norman Dale gets the tape measure out. What's the distance here? 10 feet. What's this? 10 feet. You'll find these are the exact specifications as our Jim at Hickory.
How about that? Absolutely. And that's, to me, as I look at the game, how do you strategize in a game? So a receiver in football, everything is by steps, right? So they've already got things measured out in their head without even the measuring tape. So they know if I do this 3 steps and that 3 steps, then I'm going to be in this spot on that field. Well, what if it was a different size field every weekend? that what you've been working on since you were 4 or 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, running routes is no longer the same. You just every weekend you got to do something different because the spacing's different. Wrestling is that though. Wrestling is we create a different size every weekend. Our college level for me should be 42-42, which you see at Iowa, where Carver Hawkeye lays out every home duel 42 by 42. And if we made that our uniform mat, I mean, you would see. I mean, you saw how many points that Stephen Neal scored in the national finals in '99. That mat was like a middle school mat. I mean, it was, and I don't know how he scored as many points as he did, but every time
Because he's that good, partially. But yeah,
he's that good. But every time he took 2 steps, every shot was finished out of bounds. He didn't take one shot that finished in the center of the net. I'm exaggerating, but you get my point. He had to stay within a space. Imagine if you gave him 42 by 42 to operate on, no matter who he's wrestling. I think it would be hard to run from him. It'd be hard to run from a Jason Long, for Jordan Burroughs. Any offensive wrestler, the bigger the mat, it's going to behoove them to have that larger space in which to operate. The smaller space, it's easy. Hey man, I get my heels right up on the edge of the mat and I work my way out. And hey, that was out of bounds. And it's going to take 4 or 5 of those before you even give up your first stalling call. So you can steal a whole period in a college match or a high school match for that matter with the way that the mats are. I mean, if we need to have a uniform size. The interesting thing about that is internationally, all of the mats are the same size. So if you go and watch Nedved, every mat is the same size. So I think that that's something that we need to apply to our folk style, is to have at least give our opponents or competitors an opportunity to compete on the same size hoop every weekend, the same size field every weekend, and you'll see more strategy because people will understand the outlay of the spacing, and that'll change things big time.
Another thing, I know my buddies at Blood Round have talked about this, about the home and away singlets. Like, you bring a point up is, in a gym, home is technically green. Well, my high school was maroon and gold. We were pretty much red everywhere we went, unless we were taking on Southampton, which is bright red, where we're more maroon. So you'd have the red be the home team, but it's guessed on scoreboard with the old scoreboard. I mean, so something home and away singlets, the armbands and things of that nature. That's also something that we could market a little bit better. And it's as simple as it may seem, it is a little bit of an annoyance a lot of places.
It's a heavy annoyance. So I'm a big proponent of fighting the good fight for this. I would like to see, before my dying day, I would like to see us be able to compete domestically without ankle. I guess we call them anklets, right? So, but the idea is, again, using major sports, yet again, no other major sports use an anklet. So can you imagine watching Tom Brady this weekend with an anklet?
I'm a Bucks fan, man. You got to just throw that one at me already. Jeez. I watched Tom Brady till about the 4th quarter. I'm enough. Yeah. Anyway, continue. Tom Brady ain't wearing an anklet.
Tom Brady ain't wearing an anklet. Cam Newton ain't wearing an anklet. Russell Wilson ain't wearing. So the idea is no major sport is doing that, and they're doing home and away. And what it does is you take that out of the equation, having an anklet, the need for an anklet, but then also look at international. Again, international was ahead of the game with this. As many problems as the international game has, they have the same size uniform mat all the way across the board, and then they also have, for argument's sake, home and away singlets, red and blue. So, for me, if we were wrestling in Division I nationals and you had a Penn State guy wrestling an Ohio State guy in the finals, well, then who's home, who's away? Higher seed gets home. I mean, to me, it's not a difficult thing. I mean, when you're looking at the seeds on the bracket, higher seed gets, or whoever the top of Freestyle does it, top guy gets a certain color, bottom guy gets a certain color, and you just go from there. So if you teach our kids that and ingrain that in them from 5, 6, 7 years old, they already know that. And you're bringing 2 singlets, and whether or not you think you have the finances to cover 2 singlets, and I've heard that could be a discussion. But I've seen parents spend, $3,000-$4,000 on a weekend for their kid to do a national tournament in Nevada somewhere, or New Mexico, which is, there's 7 kids in a weight class. So I don't think finances are an issue in terms of getting multiple singlets, and even if they are, you just buy a singlet to where you can switch sides and have one red, one blue, one home, one away. It's not rocket technology, as they say. I think this is pretty simple and it's something that we need to work on and add it to our game. Every other major sport has that. Kids today, the way they are selling singlets and having their singlets at Fargo, Ohio Tournament of Champions, Tulsa, you see these kids with the singlets. Imagine if they had 2 Penn State singlets. You see Oregon football, you already see what they do. But imagine having 2 singlets home and away for some of these bigger schools. I think it would be fancy. I think it would add some allure to the game. I think it's necessary, and we don't need anklets.
No, to that point, the only thing I think that could be a sticking point on the college side is college licensing deals. Because if you're blue and gold, and I know, and your rival is red, there's no way you're putting red on that singlet, for example. I think that could be one of the minor sticking points in terms of if you do it like UWW does. Secondly, the singlet.
No, I don't want to cut you off, but I don't want us to be red and blue. I'm saying home and away.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
You saw somebody just put it up.
So do you think? Well, what about a tournament format? Would that be the only situation where you have to do it, or I mean, because that's the one thing where if you get 2 red singlets or teams, I mean, you can't. I mean, how many times are you going to switch your singlet per round? Actually, you can't. NCAA rules, you can't change your uniform the same round. So it devil's in the details. I get the point.
Yeah. Now, reversible singlet solves a lot.
Secondarily, the height, dealing with the youth kids, and granted, you've been working with more of the elite next level stuff, pretty much since you've been doing the club, but the 2-piece singlet, that seems to be a discussion when it comes to, barrier to entry for, hey, let's be honest, chubby kids like me did not want to wear that thing at 16 years old. Okay. Just I'm that target avatar there. I'm the kid you want to bring into the room for the first time. And if I'm told, Ed, you ain't tough enough to be in the sport. Well, I don't know if I'm tough yet, but you block me out from that. I mean, there's a self-esteem thing here. So where do you, the elite kids, they've been wearing singlets since they were 5. It's not an issue, but let's use your experience. You're a 9th grader going out for wrestling for the first time. What did you think the first week? I had to wear that.
Yeah. So I was already a shy kid regardless. So putting on a little skimpy little uniform and running out and not knowing what the hell I'm doing just made it even worse. So it was tough. I think a doublet is a great way to introduce a couple of kids that may or may not come over to our side and let them come in and try wrestling out, offering up a doublet. Now, we'll say this. If your school decides that they want to stay with a singlet, they should have that right at this point, right? Because it's not uniform across the board yet. But I think that if one school decides they want to wear a doublet, this one wants to wear a singlet, that one wants to wear why not? Give the freedom, the opportunity to do that. I mean, you can see a lot of these major tournaments are having guys that are walking out with the doublet concept. I was doing doublets for a long time. I mean, and we loved it. Our kids, even today, these kids will still post their stuff on social media wearing the doublets from 10, 15 years ago. I mean,
well, you can wear the top to school. I mean, that's the thing. You can wear a basketball jersey. You can wear a baseball jersey, football jersey. You can't wear a wrestling singlet really in public lest you want to get, you have some problems, but unless you're Mark Bader, who wore one at the Olympics, which was quite a sight. But again, that's the point. I think it in some cases you've got to look at the age demographic of when you're getting kids in. I think the younger they are, it's not a problem. When you get to that 12, 13, 14 range where there's still a little baby fat there, and some of us aren't, haven't seen the cardiovascular and athletic benefits of the sport yet. Sitting with, hey, put that on and go in front of the student body. Oof, that's just one thing as far as. But I think the 2-piece, the doublet, whatever you want to call it, definitely adds some more marketing. But J-Rock, time we got left. What else you got on your mind, sir?
I will say this. I mean, I would like to know what everybody's concept of, because we never got around to it. So let me dip into it real quick. What everybody's concept of Russia's success has been, or international success as a whole, and why, we've gotten one world title here in 2017 as Team USA. And the last time we were on that level was back in the 90s. So why are we not getting to the level of doing what we did in 2017 on a regular and routine basis? And I think one of the reasons why is because we need to, and I know it's been hammered and beat a dead horse about this, but I feel like we need to change over to, it's time for us to change over to the international style. I think what you're seeing with the international style is these guys are so comfortable in laces, so comfortable in guts, and understanding the spacing. Again, we're back to that topic, the spacing on that freestyle mat, because those mats are all the same size, and how to utilize that spacing. It's time for us to get over there. If it's going to be hard to, not that it wasn't done, because it was done. It's going to be hard to beat Sachev. It's going to be hard to beat Sajalayev. It's going to be hard to beat these guys if, they've been doing a specific style since 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And maybe they weren't getting serious until 10, 11, and 12, but they've still been doing that style. And we got guys with leg riding, roll back halves, looking for riding time at the collegiate level. It's just, there's no transfer. It's not transferable. There's no ability to take what you developed for 5 years, at Cornell in riding and use that on the international circuit. And you alluded to it earlier with the 2-for-1 style. The reason why a lot of our guys have had some success on the international scene, in my own opinion, is that they have a style that's better suited for the freestyle circuit. I mean, JB came right out in 2011, won a world title right after graduation from Nebraska. So what helped him do that, he wasn't turning anybody. He didn't have a tilt. He didn't have any leg riding. He didn't have a leg lace. He didn't have a gut. He had nothing on top. He just took down every single wrestler that he wrestled. And then he did that for about 2-3 years. And then he started adding some stuff on top. But the takedown game, which you see internationally, 90% of those matches are decided from what you're able to do on your feet, offensively or defensively. There's ways to score defensively as well, but offensively and defensively from the neutral position. And I feel like that's a big step for us.
Man, let's make that a Twitter poll or a Facebook conversation, wherever you're watching this, listen to this. Hit us up. He is on Twitter at KneePickJesus. That's JeeZus. I'm at Jason M. Bryant. Hit the comment section on Facebook or Rockfin, wherever you hear it. Because I know that when I hear, I just talk about your Twitter handle real quick. It's like, I'm thinking, I see that name and I'm like, geez, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. So J-Rock, always a good time catching up with you, man. And so if anybody wants to find more about you and your club, what's going on, how can they do that? Where can they find you?
Yeah, I mean, check us out. KneePickJesus. I barely touch Twitter, but my Instagram, I mean, it's raw_2-for-1. That's the number one way. So RAW_, I'm on the wrong side. RAW_2-for-1. And you just go right to raw 2-for-1 and, you just hook right up on us on Instagram. But I'm on there every day, all day.
The Short-Time Wrestling Podcast is proudly outfitted by Compound Sportswear. Shirts, singlets, custom gear orders, everything you need. Call up Cliff and the crew at cmpteamwear.com. Hey, you know what? Did you like the show? You want to hit that subscribe button? MatTalkOnline.com/listen. Various different ways to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcatcher of choice. And if you're already subscribed, you're already listening, you love the show, and you want to support this show and this network, MatTalkOnline.com/join the team. Become a team member today.